For more on the two presidents' meeting, we turn to Remi Piet, senior partner of Embley Advisory. Good to see you, sir. You heard Nathan there talk a little bit about sort of the strained relationship between the two countries. Where do you think that relationship stands now?
Well, yes, I mean, it is obviously a conflictive relationship, and that was showed last month when Lopez Obrador decided to be represented and not to come by himself to the Summit of the Americas. That's one of the example, phenomenon of a tense relation between the Biden administration and Manuel Lopez Obrador in Mexico. The difference probably here in terms of take, if you compare the Biden administration with the Trump administration, is that President Biden has been trying to get, open up talks beyond the mere only politics of the border and security issues, which was the main focus of the Trump administration, and try to widen the scope of potential collaboration or discussion. And unfortunately for Biden, the position of Manuel Lopez Obrador have been quite different in terms of energy security, in terms of the conflict in Ukraine, the position of Mexico in terms of economic development. And so there's a lot of different series of disagreement that had culminated until last month. However, right now there's the sense of feeling that President Biden is trying to build new bridges towards Mexico. There's more of an understanding also on the Mexican side that the U.S. remains by far the largest market for a lot of production from Mexico, and that there has to be some kind of consensus towards at least joint a position towards the border management, especially since now Republican governors of Texas and other states are trying to get a grip on this, despite the constitutional demands that it's at a federal level. So it's actually a security issue that needs to be handled by two presidents here. And also in terms of economics and joint development and trade after the NAFTA crisis that was happening during the Trump administration. So there are avenues for more collaboration, but clearly in terms of climate change, the relation with Russia or energy security and right. Issues of migration, there are some disconnect.
I mean, you talk about the bridge building between the two. Mexico used to be essentially the sort of China of America. In other words, there was a ton of factories. We bought a ton of goods from Mexico, and there was an excellent economic relationship at a minimum. And today, that relationship is more frayed. And you would think that they would have somehow benefited from the supply chain issues, but why can't President Biden build that bridge back, so to speak, with Mexico?
Well, in truth, actually, Mexico economically strongly benefited from the NAFTA agreement and recent years. There's actually a wide gap between northern Mexico. If you go to Saltillo, Monterrey, all those regions, there are heavy, elite turn towards heavy industries towards the U.S. The southern part of Mexico is probably the one where Manuel Lopez Obrador has a stronger support in terms of popular electorate. That is one that actually turns for a series of different reasons, ideological, but also in terms of strategies and being able to balance the U.S. interests and the Chinese opportunities, especially for mineral supply chains or energy exports. Those are where you sometimes have a different perception inside Mexico already. And Manuel Lopez Obrador is more influenced probably by the vision from the southern Mexico than the one that are pro-Americans at the northern part of the country. So the personality of the two leaders has led to a strain in terms of their relationship. But if you actually look at in terms of economic determinants, in terms of trying to find common avenues in terms of energy security, and there used to be a time where we're talking about joint investment in Pemex and other oil field offshore. This is absolutely not the ideological posture of Manuel Lopez Obrador, but he's arriving to the end of his term. He's already 2 years away from the end of his term, but it's not a reconductible elections in right. Mexico. So we already trying to see potential avenues for the next 2 to 3 years, because the Biden administration will be there until 2024 at least.
The immigration reform. This has been a hot topic that goes back decades. It wasn't a yesterday issue. Both administrations, whether you're Republican or Democrat, has fought this battle, and arguably almost every administration has failed to try to alleviate these issues. And I always wondered how does Mexico view this? We view it as a crisis here in America, but how does the Mexican administration view this crisis and what role they could play?
So there's obviously a different perspective on the Mexico border in terms of the vision of migrants from Mexico to the U.S. The remittances are a very high level of GDPs in Mexico. There are clearly at the individual level some families living across the borders. The issue has been in constant strain in terms of illegal and passing of illegals with a series of drug trafficking, fentanyl trafficking at the border right now between Mexico and the U.S. has never been as high as of today, and it's a real matter of public health now in the U.S. That's actually one key point on the negotiation. Now, the difference that you have is that Mexico now is also starting to be a destination of illegal migrants from Central America, Honduras, Salvador, Nicaragua, and is actually facing also some kind of similar conditions of unwanted illegal immigrants, and you start having maybe a shift in terms of the narrative in Mexico towards this migrant crisis. Mexico fancies itself as a country part of North America, not as Latino South America, and tries to see, and is starting to see therefore the kind of results of a welcoming economy in terms of purchasing power. Again, the conditions of work in North Mexico are not so far away from the conditions in the U.S., especially in the automotive industry, and that attracts a lot of illegal migrants from other countries in the region. And Manuel Lopez Obrador might have here an incentive of working together with the U.S. in terms of a plan for Central America or for the northern hemisphere of the Americas to be able to try to find a solution to a crisis that impacts now both countries in different levels, but both countries today.
It is a good point you bring up that we often forget about the. While we are the northern neighbor, Mexico has a ton of neighbors on the other side of it that it complicates the situation greatly. Well, we're going to keep our fingers crossed. Maybe there'll be something positive that comes out of these discussions. Remi, good to see you. Thank you very much for helping us explain this very complicated issue.